Hello, friends. It's Sam Cheney reporting for Weaponized News. Today is September 10th, 2024. Thank you for joining us on this Tuesday edition of Weaponized News. We have a short intro as we have a guest on the line, Aaron Day from Daylight Freedom Foundation, the CEO of that organization, and he's also a fellow at the Brownstone Institute. He's going to inform us about the central bank digital currency, cryptocurrency, what is all going on with that. He recently had an article published on Zero Hedge, 50 Shades of Central Bank Tyranny. Very interesting, as all of that is coming at us very fast. Quickly on this day, for the short intro, I thought this was interesting. On this day, September 10th, 2008, the Large Hadron Collider at CERN, described as the biggest scientific experiment in the history of mankind, was powered up in Geneva, Switzerland in 2008 on this day. And in 2018, California passes law to commit to carbon-free electricity creation by 2045. And so on this day, the day before 9/11, let's remember we were lied to by the government at the very least about 9/11. So without further ado, let's go ahead and bring in Aaron. And then as always, we have our co-host Simon. How you doing today, Aaron?
I'm doing well, and yourself?
Doing well. Are you excited about this debate gonna be on right after we're on here?
Oh yeah, I can't wait. I don't know. It's hard to be excited about this election at all, to be honest. But who knows? I doubt many people's minds will change. I bet most people will end up thinking the same as they did coming out of it.
Simon, are you excited about the debate? Are you there, Simon? Okay, let's get right to Aaron. Let's get right to what do we do? In your article, you mentioned that we actually have CBDC, central bank digital currencies, in many forms already that people may not be aware of. It's not going to be a digital wallet directly from the Federal Reserve. And so you want to start there. How do we already have central bank digital currency in a number of ways?
Well, so it's interesting. So I've been doing this. I've been talking about CBDCs sorry, I'm just getting this camera thing figured out. I've been talking about CBDCs for over a year and a half, nonstop. And I got into this because I was observing friends of mine being targeted by the federal government who were involved in cryptocurrency. And I wanted to see why. And when I researched it, what I found was that the government is cracking down on on crypto, so that it can roll out a CBDC without competition. But then as I've studied this more, I've really tried to find out, well, what is a CBDC? What is the definition of a CBDC? I mean, people ask me that all the time. I've done probably 100 interviews. And
well, I understood the pilot project that they've launched is going to be interbank transfers.
Well, so actually, when you look at the words themselves, central bank digital currency, we actually have a central bank digital currency. And this is, I think, what I wrote about in the article, which is an important thing for people to understand. So our money is already digital. We only have 8% cash in the system. 92% of our money is actually digital today. Money is created when the Federal Reserve when the federal government issues an IOU to the Federal Reserve, and then the Federal Reserve literally creates money out of thin air in an Oracle database. So when the government is paying its bills and employees and vendors, it is writing a check and moving digits around on an Oracle database. So I have to say, just from a matter of definition, that is a central bank digital currency. That is digital. That is issued by the central bank.
So should we be buying stock in Oracle? Oracle recently moved their headquarters out of California too, by the way.
Well, no, I mean, Oracle's been had the database for a long time. This isn't news. I mean, I guess. So here's the thing. The conclusion that I've come to on this is that the globalist groups like the UN and the WEF and the Bank for International Settlements and the politicians have made up this concept of a CBDC to deflect from the fact that we already have digital money that is completely programmable and surveilled, so that they can add more levels of tyranny and move the goalpost. That is the conclusion that I've come to with this, because when I talk to people about CBDCs, I asked them, well, what are you concerned about with CBDCs? And the big ones are, and by the way, the politicians absolutely harp on this nonstop. The politicians make this always about,
Ted Cruz is going to save us, right?
Ted Cruz is going to save us. Ted Cruz, who I talked to about this, he's going to say, well, this is all about financial surveillance, and we can't have Americans surveilled by the central bank. And so he makes it out like the central bank is the bad actor. Now, the central bank is a bad actor. It's an unnecessary middleman, and money itself is a Ponzi scheme. So don't take what I'm saying as in any way, shape, or form defense of the central bank, but understand this: our money is already surveilled today. And I'm going to list some of the ways in which it's surveilled. So, of course, they can go through the subpoena and court order process, but that's the least common one used. We have financial intelligence unit requests. We have the Bank Secrecy Act reporting. So automatically, if you take out certain amounts of money, 10,000, 5,000, it's automatically reported to the government.
It throws up a red flag when you're trying to withdraw past a certain threshold.
Correct. And you're not actually allowed to even transport certain amounts of cash over state lines. That triggers a whole other thing. So that's built in by default. That automatically happens today.
Isn't every deposit you make to a bank an unsecured loan, essentially?
Well, yeah, I mean, essentially it is, right? Because when
they say you have security through FDIC, but if the whole system crashed, they don't have enough funding to make everyone whole again, for sure.
Well, let's be clear on this. So last year, when those 4 banks collapsed, they went through the entire FDIC reserve fund. The FDIC reserve fund only has 1.2%, can cover 1.2% of customer deposits. So let's put this in perspective. JP Morgan Chase has more than 10% of customer deposits. If JP Morgan Chase went under, you're already, 8 times, you've wiped out 8 times the reserves of the entirety of the banking system. So FDIC insurance is an illusion, and we already, as I said, went through it completely last year. And so, but on top of that, I mean, your question is, isn't it an unsecured loan? So the money is printed out of thin air, backed by an IOU. That's the basis of how money is created at the Federal Reserve in an Oracle database.
That's the fiat, yeah.
That's fiat. Then vendors and employees are paid with checks. Those checks get deposited in commercial banks. So every commercial bank has their own database, and they're using either Oracle or Microsoft. I mean, they're literally using Microsoft SQL servers. And so you deposit this check from the government for like $1,000, and then the commercial bank can create 10,000 new dollars out of thin air in their database. So at the end,
that's the fractional reserve, but then they got rid of all reserve requirements during the medical emergency period, right?
They did, but actually it turns out that banks are keeping more reserves with the Federal Reserve, and that's not because they're required to, but it's because of more shenanigans and other factors. And so it's not, but they're not obligated to. I mean, they are obligated to hit other ratios, and so which kind of make it so that they end up having that kind of reserve level. But yes, there is no strict 10% reserve deposit. So literally all of this money is made out of thin air in all of these centralized databases, leveraged 10 times or more. And so when you put your money in the bank, it is only secured at the end of the day by 10% of an IOU from the federal government and an insurance policy that covers 1.2%.
And they're watching if you withdraw more than 10,000, they'll flag you for being a terrorist, white Al Qaeda.
They will flag you. And in fact, I've shared videos on this. One, they might not actually have the cash to give you. So 8% of the money supply is in cash. And we've seen situations like this, and I've seen this reported multiple times, where you actually will have to schedule a couple days in advance if you're going to take out large amounts of cash, because they simply don't have cash, because cash is no longer a large part of the money supply. And so, this is
So you
why.
can't even rob a bank nowadays and expect to get cash out of the vault. So maybe you should wear a mask into the bank. No?
Yeah, well, I mean, again, no, robbing a bank involves figuring out how to hack Microsoft and Oracle databases, right? I mean,
Apparently not walking in there with a gun and sticking up the teller.
No,
anymore.
not sticking up the teller. The dollar, the paper money is just a token representing a database entry. Actually, that's kind of another way
That is a good way to describe it.
And so then there's the Patriot Act. There are things called national security letters. And a friend of mine, Ladar Levison, had this happen to him. He ran the email service provider that Edward Snowden used, and so the government went after him, and because they wanted to get access to Snowden's emails, and so they issued one of these national security letters. And when you get a national security letter, not only can you not talk about your case, you can't even talk to a lawyer about your case. That's what a national security letter means. So they can use these for your financial transactions. They can shut off your bank account and then actually tell you, not only can you not talk about it publicly, you can't even consult a lawyer. We have suspicious activity reports, civil asset forfeiture, data sharing agreements with other countries, SWIFT monitoring, mutual legal assistance treaties, and now the IRS is working directly with banks to use AI to analyze their financial transactions. Because when you look at the contract that you have with the bank, which no one does, it's another one of these click wrap agreements that we sign without reading it. It says that the bank can sell or give away your transaction information. It says that they can change the terms and conditions, they can change fees, and they can cancel your account without cause. That is the base level situation that we have with our bank accounts. So everything that I just outlined right there is how our digital money is being surveilled today. So I ask you, if people are sitting there saying, oh, I'm worried, I don't want financial surveillance, how much worse can it get than bulk data collection by the NSA, the IRS, monitoring all of your transactions, and then these 10 other mechanisms that the government can use to access or shut off your money. You know what I mean?
We're already there because the big threat is out there. We don't want this, the mark of the beast, but it's already there essentially. We just haven't got to the point where we're on the social credit score system yet, and they haven't outlawed cash yet, but we're almost there. And as you mentioned, all these different forms of surveillance are already in place and have been in place for a very long time.
Well, so I say in the article, and then I put together some better graphics that I should have embedded into the article. We're already at a 45 out of 200 in terms of central bank digital currency tyranny. So it's already tyranny. It's already surveilled. There's already some programming involved. The ultimate end goal in this, what does 200 out of 200 looks like? It looks like a one world global digital currency backed by energy credits that's completely monitored, completely tied to a social credit system, and completely programmed, where it's cashless and cryptocurrency has been banned. That is the ultimate form of central bank digital currency. But to be clear,
we still trade shells and rocks and sticks, or no? We'll get arrested if we try to use that as currency.
Yeah, well, that would be a violation of your social credit score. I'm sure that absolutely would not be allowed. So the point is that, but it's already bad. What I'm trying to say is that for most people, when they hear politicians talk about we can't have financial surveillance, they have no idea that they're already being surveilled. Through Operation Choke Point, over 20 categories were basically shut off and denied bank services. I mean,
what's that? That's going after firearms, right?
Going after firearms, and I've got a whole category here that, vaping, CBDC, CBD oil. You have they've used it to target certain religious groups. Let me pop up my.
So anything the government doesn't like, they can dial down in and target that product, industry, even individual.
They can. And so they've gone after fire and ammunition dealers, tactical gear and supplies, coin dealers and precious metals, cryptocurrency, prepper and survivalist stores, gun ranges, off-grid living suppliers, precious metal refiners, alternative health and wellness, holistic health centers, pawn shops, religious and faith-based organizations, health food stores, natural food and organic farms, tattoo parlors, free speech advocacy. I mean, these are all categories of businesses that have actually struggled to maintain. I mean, I talked to Mike Adams of Health Ranger. He can't get a credit card processor. I listened to Nick Fuentes. Somebody sent me a clip with him. He's been denied from 5 different banks. He's even had crypto seized. He's never been charged with anything. So
remember the Canada protesters about the medical freedom? They got a bunch of their bank accounts shut down.
Yes, so they already do it. So what I'm trying to say is that the dollar is already tyranny. It's already digital. We need to exit it now. There isn't something to be worried about. People should be horrified about what it currently is, and they're unaware of it. And so this article came about just because, I mean, I've been asked this question so many times, and of course, then I look at, okay, well, what do they mean by what do they mean by central bank digital currencies? And I went through kind of a checklist, and so it's like, okay, so one thought is that a central bank digital currency means that you have an account directly with the central bank and that banks go away, commercial banks go away. But that's not true. There's no implementation of CBDCs, including in China, where commercial banks go away. It's always a system where the central bank issues the digital currency to the commercial banks, and the commercial banks continue to engage in the fraudulent behavior and activities that they engage in. But it's not even being contemplated. In fact, to be a CBDC doesn't mean you get rid of cash either. No one's gotten rid of cash that's implemented a CBDC so far. There's certainly, that might be, again, their intention, going back to what I'm saying is 200 out of 200. But when I look at, 11 countries have launched a CBDC. 64 countries are beyond the research phase and are either at the pilot or some phase of rollout. There are 134 countries representing 98% of global GDP researching and seriously considering CBDC. But then when I went and looked at it, I'm like, well, but they mean different things. And at the end of the day, what's really different about what they're saying versus what we have? And it's really a distinction without a difference. And there isn't a common set of things. So it doesn't have to be cashless. It doesn't mean getting rid of commercial banks. There's this element of programmability. One thing people say is that, well, it means you're putting in a blockchain. There's nothing in the definition of central bank digital currency that says blockchain. It's not central blockchain digital currency or central bank. You can use a centralized database like Oracle and Microsoft and program it just the same as you can program a blockchain. People have been building websites and programming Oracle and Microsoft databases. In fact, when we talk about programmability, if you've ever had a health savings account or a flexible spending account, what is that? The largest provider of health savings accounts in the United States is Optum Bank. It is a bank. They have 5 million customers. And what do their customers get? The customers get a card tied to the bank that tells them what healthcare products they can buy, when they can buy them, and at what retailers they can buy them. That is programmable digital money through banks, through the existing digital currency system that we have. Now, more horrifying is this Doconomy MasterCard, which is a UN branded MasterCard with the 13 climate action sustainable development goal on it that shuts off when you use too much carbon. This exists in the marketplace today. People use it. MasterCard already has relationships with over 150 merchants all around the country, and they're already tracking our carbon use, and they're already using that information to censor and cut off our access to to money. That no change is required to the system. So there's no big technical upgrade that needs to happen to add a social credit system. Now, I would argue, actually, to your earlier point, and I'm going to write an article about this, we already have a social credit system. It's called the tax code. It just doesn't have a user-friendly interface. We don't have an app for our social credit score. But what is a 401k? Here's a financial instrument you can buy. You can use pre-tax money. Your employer can contribute, but you have to hold the investments until you're 59 and a half. And it's the use of tax penalties and incentives to drive behavior. And actually, I'm going through the process of looking at each of the 17 sustainable development goals and matching it to US tax code. And I'm finding that, of course, there are tax incentives for green energy. Remember Solyndra and all of these other things that we have going on. You can go through each of these, and what you'll find is, we use the tax code as a social credit system. There's just nobody's aware of it. And it's kind of behind the scenes. It's complicated, and there's no nice, shiny digital interface to where you can see how you're doing.
Who will build the roads, though, Aaron? That's the big question.
Well, who will be? Well, it's it's the federal government doesn't. Well, I guess interstate highways, but yeah, that worked. It worked out all right before 1913. I guess we'll have to figure something out. But of course, the top three items of the budget are entitlement spending, defense, and interest on the debt. So,
Interest on the debt's getting crazy. Debt is becoming unsustainable. We've been covering that. What is it going to be? I forget the exact time frame, but in a very short time, it's like $1 trillion every 3 months, something like that. Simon, are you there?
The trillion every 3 months is on the deficit, but in terms of the interest payments on the outstanding national debt, it's already at about $3 billion a day.
$3 billion a day. You got any questions for Aaron?
Well, I just wanted to know, Aaron, how you see this being combined with digital identity, because we've had that in India and it's being rolled out currently in Australia. And I agree with you, many countries are in the process of going cash-free, like Australia, like Sweden, like Japan. And, in Australia, we've had Nina Jankovic literally shacked up with the American who's under contract to act as the e-safety commissioner in Australia this last weekend in the governor's mansion in Canberra, the governor general appointed by the king. And they seem to have come up with this scheme that you'll have to, initially they said you'd have to have digital identity to log into the internet at all. VPNs would be banned in Australia. This was before what happened in Brazil. Then they said it was to prevent 14 or younger from accessing any social media. And the leader of the official opposition, Peter Dutton, came out this morning in Australia time and said that not only did he support it, but he thought the age should be raised from 14 to 16. So it's basically no internet anonymity whatsoever. Can't log into social media unless you're 16 years old. And already they had introduced the digital identity initially as driver's licenses for one state. Then it rolled out to all states. It was optional. Now it's barely optional. They told people that you wouldn't have to have that in order to get a job. But now it turns out you have to have it in order to get a background check. So if you're doing anything like teaching, childcare, anything to do with any kind of like children, national security, or anything like that, have to have digital identity. And now they want to make it so you can't log into the internet by Christmas of this year in Australia. So it just goes to show you how fast and how far these things go.
No, you're absolutely right. I saw that about the age 14 thing today, and I it's not far off here. I mean, we already have real ID. I mean, to me, I feel like we already have digital IDs to a certain degree. I mean, this is another one of those kind of people like worry about CBDCs. I'm like, wait, worry about CBDCs? We already have a CBDC. And people are like, oh, well, we should worry about digital IDs. What is real ID? What is, if you want to get verified to have a bank account, then go through KYC AML. If you like everything that you do now, any service you sign up for, it seems like has biometric screening, and they use a shared vendor. So, I mean, I think we probably already effectively have a digital ID. And I think that the answer to all of this is, and by the way, which is what I do, and what I think the solution is to, one, focus on privacy, and two, exit these systems. There is no voting our way out of this.
Trump's going to save us, Aaron. Trump's going to save us.
So for instance, on crypto, this woman, Cynthia Loomis, who's the Republican senator.
Trump wants Bitcoin to United States to be Bitcoin capital of the world.
Yep. Bitcoin is a surveillance coin. Bitcoin is a hijacked. No. I'm actually not kidding, my friend.
I saw you posting quite a bit about Bitcoin hijacking. Yeah.
Hijacking Bitcoin by Roger Ver. So Roger Ver got involved. I learned about Bitcoin in 2012 from Roger. Roger got involved in Bitcoin in 2010. He was the first business to take Bitcoin. He was the first person to invest in Bitcoin related companies. He gave thousands of Bitcoin away to people. He was probably more responsible for spreading the word about Bitcoin from 2010 to 2015 than anyone. And then something happened in 2015 and it changed. And then all of a sudden, Bitcoin went from being digital cash that people use as a currency to buy and sell things to digital gold, something that you don't spend, something that's slow and expensive to use. That was actually a hijacking that was done very deliberately. And
because it's called the most valuable digital asset, digital gold, right?
Yeah, they changed the narrative. That's not what's in the white paper. There's nothing in the white paper about digital gold.
It's supposed to be peer-to-peer
digital cash
transactions. Yeah.
That's literally the title of the white paper, is peer-to-peer digital cash. So now it's been hijacked. Roger, who has been very successful, he renounced his U.S. citizenship in 2014, left the country. He's very much a libertarian or voluntarist, however you want to call it, moved to St. Kitts in Japan. And he was arrested in Spain 3 months after he wrote this book, Hijacking Bitcoin, on alleged tax things that were 10 years old. They use chain analysis, which, by the way, Bitcoin is completely trackable. You can find somebody's transactions. It's a public ledger. All of the information is there. And now they're trying to go after him for stuff from 10 years ago, conveniently 3 weeks after he published a book that destroys the Bitcoin narrative. And by the way, he was getting a lot of traction on this as well. I had interviewed him, and he was really starting to change minds with the book, because the book is very fact-filled. I mean, it's undeniable what his arguments and proof are about the supposition that Bitcoin was hijacked. And now he was thrown in the same prison John McAfee died in.
Yeah, so I was going to say, he didn't learn from McAfee's experience.
Well, no, but he's completely different than McAfee. I mean, again, this is a guy that he paid his exit tax. He actually paid his case is actually absurd. So you're supposed to pay 25% when you leave. And they're trying to make some claim that if they're trying to value if he had sold all of his Bitcoin in one day in 2014, it wouldn't have been enough to pay the tax liability, because he would have made up half of the volume of the entire market for Bitcoin. It's absurd what they're doing, going against him. And they're doing it to target him because he's effective at introducing these types of currencies, and he's remained focused on the mission of peer-to-peer digital cash. And so
you're saying
it's
now
interesting that he got St. Kitts citizenship, same as Pavel Durov.
I didn't realize that about Pavel, but that's it's interesting.
That is an interesting coincidence. So now you're saying the U.S. federal government is a shadow Bitcoin supporter?
What I'm saying is I don't think Trump knows what he's getting bad advice. I know who's giving him advice.
You talk about in the article, you spoke with Ramaswamy and briefed him about what's going on with crypto, and he got in Trump's ear about it.
On CBDCs, yes, but on the Bitcoin issue, this idea of a Bitcoin strategic reserve is. Let me put it this way. If I came up here today and I said, hey, listen, Nancy Pelosi just announced that she's going to spend $1 trillion of taxpayer money to buy her stock portfolio and hold it for 20 years. What would you say about that? How would you characterize that? It's kind of an Ayn Rand villain, peak cronyism, like the height of corruption. I don't even know how do you start looking at this. So that's what's happened with the strategic reserve. Cynthia Loomis has proposed this. She's a senator from Wyoming. She owns $500,000 worth of Bitcoin. She went on the stage at a Bitcoin conference and then subsequently drafted a bill that proposes that the U.S. government buys $1 trillion worth of Bitcoin and holds it for 20 years to pay off the debt. So
is that going to be paid for with $1 trillion coin they've just minted?
I mean, so the thing is, what frustrates me about this, right? So I've been living on alternative assets since 2019. So people would associate me with Bitcoin, and I've been very clear about my viewpoints on this. I can't. This is the worst form of crony. So my kids. So we have $35.3 trillion worth of debt. You're going to borrow money from my kids. You're going to steal from my kids to buy your cryptocurrency that was hijacked by people that had funding from Jeffrey Epstein. Are you kidding me? This is beyond a bad idea. But Trump's idea was, and we'll start the strategic Bitcoin reserve with the 200,000 Bitcoin that we already have. Well, how did it get the 200,000 Bitcoin? It didn't buy the Bitcoin on the open market. They stole it through civil asset forfeiture. So Trump's crypto strategy, and Loomis's crypto strategy is about as anti-liberty as it gets, and it does nothing to address the CBDC issue, because what's happening is people are putting their money in a hijacked cryptocurrency that can only do 7 transactions per second, that can be completely surveilled, and then they're not using it as currency. They're holding it in BlackRock ETFs. So if I had something that I'm supposed to use as cash without third parties, and now what I'm doing is I'm buying a BlackRock investment, and then BlackRock doesn't even hold the Bitcoin. They have Coinbase hold the Bitcoin. This is like the most ridiculous.
And then they leverage it and do all these different derivative betting schemes as well, and it's just a giant another mess.
It's an absolute mess. And so well, yeah, you know, I see they stole it from Ross Ulbricht. They stole it from Ian Freeman in the Free State Project. That when they knocked down his door, they stole $5 million worth of his Bitcoin. They stole it from there was an exchange hack where they actually just confiscated the Bitcoin, and there was no actual, like, they should have redistributed the Bitcoin to the people that were that had accounts at the exchange, but they didn't. They held on to it. And so so this is a horrible idea. Civil asset forfeiture is a horrible idea. So yeah, so Trump isn't going to fix it. This is not a great
I see the FBI reported yesterday or this morning, so in so many different time zones, it's hard to even keep track of what day I'm on. They reported that in 2023, due to fraud, cryptocurrency, US citizen holders lost $5.6 billion.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, that's from theft, right? That's not from civil asset forfeiture.
No, that's not the Feds taking it. That's other either small exchanges collapsing or fraud, like that guy in Japan. I can't remember what his name was. The one who his whole exchange collapsed.
Yeah, it was Mt. Gox. Mark. Well, actually, that guy's he's starting a new exchange. Although you know what, the funny thing about him is he probably made more people money, because they are actually just now distributing some of the Bitcoin from 2014. None of those people would have held from.
See, he was helping. He's helping by secretly holding it for him.
Well, no. So he actually. Here's the thing about that. He didn't actually steal it. It's not. So I mean, it was actually hacked. Nobody actually, those coins haven't moved. So at the end of the day, I mean, again, that kind of thing happens. I mean, there are hacks. This is a risk. This is why I say never leaving coins on an exchange is as dangerous as leaving money in a bank. I mean, you don't own it. It's not yours. And there are so many layers of risk that it's just not worth it. But anyway, yeah, no. So Trump's not going to fix it. And again, the way I came up with this Shades of Tyranny index is to show that as legislation is being put forward by either Democrats or Republicans, you can see that it is adding to the tyranny, whichever side is proposing it. The Republicans are saying, well, we're not going to do CBDCs, but we're going to give commercial banks exclusive ability to issue stable coins, what are called stable coins. So basically digital programmable tokens that are tied to the dollar. Well, what's the difference between a digital programmable token tied to the dollar if it's coming from a commercial bank or if it's coming from the central bank? They're already surveilling the commercial banks anyway, right? And so it's like this isn't even an important distinction. So they're somehow acting like they're pro crypto and pro markets, while giving banks more control over cryptocurrency and giving them access to programmable cash is not a win for freedom or a win for surveillance. Again, this stuff is supposed to replace banks. So that's their whole model, and everybody's against privacy. So the Democrats, and it's always money laundering and terrorism. That's the old, that's the old trusty that they use for tightening up on all of that, which is why what I'm doing now is I'm going across the country and I'm teaching people to use privacy coins.
Aaron, tell us how you were able to get this foundation named the Daylight Freedom Foundation, because we know that the IRS hates freedom. So why would they issue you your 501c3 to become a nonprofit here? Because they hate freedom. Isn't the name enough to have them deny you?
No, I mean, I went through a process, an easy, accelerated process, and the mission of the organization probably seemed innocuous enough when they read it. It's promoting free will and decentralization and that kind of thing. And so,
That sounds like terrorism to me.
well, I mean, who knows how long it'll last. And I think.
Did you throw some equity in there too?
No, I didn't throw any equity. There's no, I mean, you can go to the website. There's no, woke language. I mean, it is about as it's me on a it's all my language on a website. So I mean, the irony of it is though that I while I have a donation button, I don't even think the donation thing is live yet. I'm not even raising money for it. So it's but I run the events through it. I run our workshops through it, and
daylightfreedom.org right there. Everybody can see. Go check that out.
You realize, of course, that if you do start doing investing accounts, you have to call them daylight savings, right?
That is a good little hook there.
That is a good one. So I'm teaching people how to use gold. Holding up a gold back here. I don't know if you can see that. Gold back. Mm-hmm. 1/1000th of an ounce of gold in spendable form. I'm teaching people how to use crypto. I'm teaching people how to use silver. Teaching people how to use alternatives that are outside of the system, because that's the only way we beat this. There is no, once you understand they're pushing for a technocracy, they don't care about individual rights. They don't care about property rights. They actually think that we're basically just, a waste of space, and that only the elites can, pick scientists and engineers to make decisions for everybody.
Well, we're the carbon they want to get rid of.
Yeah, well, or use us as energy. They'll harvest us for energy. And but that is true. And unless you acknowledge that, it's not a conspiracy theory. I mean, at this point, they say it in their own words. In my book, I talk about this, and the source material are the WEF, the UEN, the UN Bank for International Settlements, IMF, and World Bank directly. It's them, their documents, their materials, their videos, their speeches. There's no, and that, by the way, is the default. We're not going back to a pre-2019 USA. And the reason for that is that we've basically been coasting on a series of Ponzi schemes since World War II, and the time is up. So there isn't any going back. So the problem that I have is it's going to fail. At this point, the political argument is about whether we're going to fail fast or whether we're going to fail slow. And to which point, my point is, it only matters whether it's fast or slow if you're actually trying to build an alternative. Because if you aren't trying to build an alternative, then you're going to end up in the same place no matter what. They're pitching 15-minute cities. We don't have an alternative that we're pitching, because going back to the way things were post or pre-2019 is not available to us. So we have to actually come up with and start working on alternatives from first principles. And I'm not finding a lot of people that people are too attached to some notion of what they think America is, that it is not. It already isn't that, and it's not going to go back to that. It can be something better, but the default is it's going to be absolute global digital tyranny.
All right. I don't know if you're aware, Simon is going through these the documents from this big China Africa meeting, and China is rolling out their own international banking system, essentially. Simon, you want to brief us about that again?
They said that for cross-border interbank payments within Africa, they've agreed with pretty much the entire continent, over 50 countries, that they're going to set that up for them, and it's going to be denominated in the yuan. So they're going to completely de-dollarize the cross-border payments within Africa.
Yep.
Within the next 3 years.
Yep.
We keep telling everybody, reporting on the international geopolitics, and the rest of the world is sick of America, the hegemonic power, and it will become a multipolar world, and most Americans don't seem to understand this.
And what's interesting as well is the Chinese Premier Li Qiang arrived in Saudi Arabia today, and the Chinese government, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, have specifically said that the petro yuan is on the agenda.
Yep. Yeah. No. I mean, there's no doubt about the dollar losing its global reserve status. And just by the way, it's hard for people because in America, nobody's taught about how the dollar works. Nobody's taught financial literacy in America, if it's even taught at all, is basically how to do arithmetic entries on top of a Ponzi scheme. So in other words, it's how to balance a checkbook. Nobody teaches you that the thing that you're balancing is actually built on a complete house of cards and that the money is a Ponzi. Nobody knows where money comes from. And because the dollar has been the global reserve currency for all of our lives, we've never even questioned whether it could be any other way. When in reality, the 5 previous global reserve currencies only lasted 84 years, and we've been the global reserve currency for over 100 years. So we're already kind of at the end of the life cycle there. And so if you look at the fact that all fiat currencies fail, there are 7 main reasons that fiat currencies fail, and the dollar is failing on all 7. So essentially, we are near the end point. And competition is one of the reasons, and so is technology. So we're getting hit on both sides. So yeah, no, this is inevitable. This is why what I try to tell people is why would you keep using the dollar? So the money that you have in the bank isn't yours. They can do whatever they want with it. It's backed by nothing. They don't have any cash. They would blow through the reserves if even one large bank collapsed. And they're adding more programmability and surveillance to it every day. So why are we not exiting this in droves? Because, by the way, if you exit the bank and you stop using the dollar, that's how you halt CBDCs, that's how you stop World War III, and that's how you end the Fed. All of these wars run on fiat currency. If we stop using the money, I mean, just literally starve the beast, stop using this fiat currency and start using these alternatives. The single most effective political statement we can make, and it's the biggest single thing that we can do to stop technocracy.
All right, Aaron, let's you're welcome. We're going to go now to the news segment. You're welcome to stay.
Aaron, if we go to this first news segment, then maybe Aaron would like to comment on this immediately. Thoughts on the continuing resolution that we've been looking at in terms of the SAVE Act that Trump has now come out hugely in favor of, even though it's undoubtedly too little too late. It's completely impossible to implement for this cycle of elections. Should have been done 3 years ago. And obviously, I think it's North Carolina have already started mail-in voting. So the idea that some federal law is going to impose identification conditions at this late stage is completely and totally ridiculous. But it's interesting that once again, there does appear to be a dichotomy between what Johnson is pushing and what Trump is now in writing insisting upon.
Yeah, and it's funny because where this ends, I mean, I don't know where it ends up going. I think you're absolutely right that it doesn't end up getting implemented for this election cycle. But what I will say is I can actually see Republicans using voter ID as a way to implement digital IDs. Yeah, there are 2 different. When you actually step back and strip back and look at all of this stuff, again, the tyranny gets layered on no matter what. No one ever stops the surveillance state. There's been no stop of the surveillance state since I've been alive, and especially since 9/11. And so I can completely see Republicans saying we need digital IDs for voter identification, and I can see Republicans actually going along with that.
And we're already seeing that in Britain. The argument, each country has a different argument. So when these were first rolled out with the UNGA 2020, and they had their pilot scheme in Bangladesh, and they had another pilot scheme in Austin, Texas, they had different rationales. Bangladesh, it was you're stateless, you don't have a passport, you can't register the birth, you don't have any health records, you don't have any educational records. But this is essential for you to even be able to create a new life in a different country. And Austin, Texas, when they were doing it with the homeless people, and interesting enough, one of the city manager IT folks actually got an award for this scheme. And it was all run out of, I think it was the Greenberg Foundation, so that there was no Freedom of Information Act request that could be submitted regarding it. There, it was because homeless people regularly get rousted, and then a bulldozer gets driven through their tent cities, and they lose everything. So they were saying, okay, if you could lose your wallet, you could lose your driver's license and your social security card and your library card. And so if we have everything all in one place, and you have that put in a chip in your head or your hand, that'll be much more convenient. So in Britain, with the digital identity, they were saying, oh, we can use that to crack down on illegal migration, and identity theft will be harder, and they won't be able to claim social benefits. So even though it's only 50,000 people a year for a population of 67 million, on that kind of like knee-jerk political issue, you suddenly stampede 67 million people into running into the trap.
Yeah, I mean, problem, reaction, solution every time. This is how we get everything.
And remember, they just reported a couple of weeks back that everyone's social security number got leaked.
Mm-hmm.
If it wasn't already, but now it's like mainstream news. There it is, everybody's social security. So of course we need digital ID to keep everybody's digital ID safe.
But ironically, that just goes to show you that the systems aren't safe in the first place. So if everyone's data for everything, all their health records, tax records, educational records, criminal justice records, were all in one place, then it wouldn't just be their social security numbers, it would be everything else attached to that as well.
I wrote an article before this last one called You May Own Nothing Sooner Than You Think. It's a really long article, but it actually explains what's going on with. So CBDCs are a form of tokenized digital money, but what they want to do is they want to tokenize all of our other assets, our stocks, our bonds, our house, our car, and everything, and put that on a shared ledger with CBDCs so that they can centrally control all of our assets. And they're actually, this is what they're developing as far as the CBDC
it's
goes.
the doomsday book for the world.
Yeah, and
So
when
when William the Conqueror went from France to England and took over England, he wanted not only a census, but an asset account of the entire country, so he knew what his tax base was.
Yep.
And that's what the globalists want to do as well.
Yes, they want to do it for everything, and there's a concept.
And they want to, but they don't want to put a dollar price thing. They want to put a carbon value on everything.
Yes, that is the goal of technocracy, is to flip the economy from a price-based system to an energy credit-based system. That is literally, and I put in the article, this is how they're designing CBDCs. So they're building something called a regulated liability network, which is a ledger that tracks all of these assets, monetary assets and non-monetary assets. But the US is building one, Japan is building one, Europe is building one, and they're designed to interoperate. So what happens out of this process with CBDCs and the digitization of all assets is you end up with a common global ledger for all assets.
And interestingly enough, that's one of the other things that the Chinese said they would help the Africans push back against the first continent to introduce this, which is the European Union, via their carbon border adjustment mechanism, which is to essentially price every object in the world in terms of carbon. Yep. And if it's been produced too cheaply in Asia or Africa, then they're going to place tariffs on it so that everything becomes equalized.
Yep.
And when every single item has a individual carbon value, then obviously that ties in with the Duconomy credit card and actually limiting people's monthly usage of energy, not just in their utility bills, but much like in the movie with Matt Damon, Elysium.
That's absolutely right. That is 100% what the strategy is, and it's there in plain sight, and they're building it. Like it's not just because when people say to me, "Oh, well, that's just a pipe dream; they'll never do it."
No,
and I showing them that
CBAM starts next year.
They're doing it. It's already done.
Yeah, it's already done, and
they're starting off with like key industries, so like steel, aluminum, nickel, palm oil, stuff like that. That is easy to kind of say, oh, well, I don't buy 10 tons of steel a year or a tanker ship full of palm oil. It's kind of like divorced from daily life. But then just like transistors being miniaturized, all the volumes and all the items get miniaturized in terms of the scale. It's the same with the wealth tax that Kamala's proposing. Starts off at 100 million, and in 5 years' time, it's 100,000.
Yep.
Here's from Rockfin viewer Denver. Thank you for this post from our friends at the World Economic Forum. My Carbon, an approach for inclusive and sustainable cities. Very nice there from them. So it is already here.
But it's interesting that the Chinese, despite having a functioning social credit system, are actually going to help what they call the LDCs, the lesser developed countries, use the World Trade Organization to push back against CBAMs.
It's technocracy is even too totalitarian for communist China.
Yeah, no, it's bad. And that's what we're fighting against. So, and by the way, so somebody mentioned earlier the multipolar world. It is a multipolar world, but not in the way people think. It's not China and Russia. It's not nations emerging. What we're actually dealing with is a fight over who's going to control the technocracy. So you actually have the PayPal mafia on the one hand. You've got
Elon Musk's grandfather's the head guy of the original technocracy
in Canada, and and so you have Peter Thiel and Elon Musk on one side, and then you've got OpenAI and Microsoft and Bill Gates on another side. Then you've got Google, and then you've got Facebook out there. And these guys, this is why I look at when I look at Elon and people like Elon's a hero. Elon is look at that talk that he had with Trump. He's figuring out a way to get in here where he's making decisions about the budget. He's pushing his crony projects. He's trying to get everybody excited about the idea of having moonshot projects that the country gets behind. Well, this is the using the government to pick scientists and engineers, him, to make decisions for everybody and to reallocate resources. And so
they already put their man, J.D. Vance, that's Peter Thiel's man right there.
He is. And so it's frustrating for me because I'm seeing a lot of pro-liberty people that think that Elon Musk is a hero for free speech, that somehow he was sacrificing when he bought Twitter, and he wasn't, because he always said he wanted Twitter to be like WeChat, and WeChat is the basis of a lot of the social credit
he
tools.
Said X, the app for everything. You can't even put a freaking link on the site you can't even put a link to outside to the World Wide Web without getting shadow banned and throttled.
Let alone mentioning the aardvarks.
and there are off grounds topics that you're not allowed to talk about as well for the great free speech public square platform owned by Elon Musk.
Yeah, no, it's a limited hangout, I guess, for lack of a better word. I mean, and my traffic dropped 85% after I dropped that last article. TikTok, I did a video about it, and TikTok actually explicitly stated that they wouldn't boost it. And they're like, well, they said conspiracy. Nobody has fact checked the art. Nobody has said that this is wrong. Nobody has pointed out. I mean, Zero Hedge, published it. I mean, it's reached 30,000 people at least. And no one has said this is factually wrong. They just think it's dangerous, the idea of people understanding and realizing that we already have a central bank digital currency, and that it only gets worse from here. Well, yeah, it is a dangerous concept, because if people wake up and realize this whole thing is a Ponzi scheme, and it's going to implode by design to lead to a technocracy nightmare, then yeah, that is a threat to the people that are in power, but it's not a threat to the people.
It's okay though, because those 30,000 people have lives not worth living.
Yeah. Oh, true.
Okay, let's move on to the news, Simon. What do you want to cover first here?
Run through the headlines.
We got, the debate. I think we talked about that already. All eyes on the debate. Of course, Kamala and Trump tonight. The magic bullets, not beans. So the aardvarks are good friends over there. They did kill a U.S. citizen, but it's okay because why, Simon? They investigated themselves and found no wrongdoing.
They magically investigated themselves in less than a day, and apparently it was an unintentional shot that unintentionally hit her square in the forehead, killing her outright. And Biden's now taken that to mean that it was a negligent discharge that hit a rock and ricocheted into her face. So no harm, no foul. We don't need to take any action against the aardvarks in any respect whatsoever. UNGA
Palestine resolution.
So this is the big one. So the 79th session of the United Nations, which we all love and adore, will be commencing tomorrow. And there's already a zero draft that's been floating around since Saturday regarding Palestine in particular, with an implementation measure for the International Court of Justice advisory opinion on the status of the aardvark occupation of the Palestinian territory. And so they've got a very long, kind of 5-page or so resolution that the aardvarks are completely freaking out about. Their foreign minister today, Mr. Katz, not the musical, this guy doesn't sing nearly as well, though he may like to do costume antics, has said that they're basically going to shut down the whole Palestinian Authority. They're going to debank them, deplatform them, bomb their headquarters to smithereens, and all their other usual friendly tactics.
Aaron, what do the Palestinian Authority do about being debanked? It could be you next, right? I mean, everybody hates Palestinians and the Muslims, but it could be you next, Mr. Evangelical Christian.
Well, I mean, religious groups have actually already been targeted in the United States. That's already happened here. And I mean, I've actually talked to people. When I went out to California and I did my workshop, I was at the Calvary Church out there, which was the church that defied the lockdowns and racked up millions of dollars of fines and said, "Nah, we're staying open anyway." They've had issues with
everybody died at that church from COVID.
Huh?
Everybody at that church died of COVID.
Yeah. Everybody died from COVID, and that's why we had a packed audience. But no one died. They resisted, but they've had issues. So there are specialty payment processors for Christian and religious-based organizations because there already is difficulty within that category. And so I have that list of 20 categories that have been targeted. It was explicitly called Operation Choke Point. And I'm going to start sharing this because people need to understand. I'm not warning.
That was courtesy of Eric Holder, wasn't it?
It was courtesy of Eric Holder, and arguably we're now under Operation Choke Point 2, which has had its targeting of crypto, which has been huge. I mean, we're down to like 4 crypto exchanges, and just last week a bank in Texas was charged with a whole bunch of, KYC AML violations. There's somebody that I know that's trying to start a bank that can't get access to the Fed because has cryptocurrency related services. This is already ongoing. And so it's just a matter of making people aware that, no, this isn't about whether you're a criminal or not. Soon it's going to be, oh, you buy raw milk. Oh, you eat red meat. Oh, you eat organic vegetables. I'm sorry.
Oh, you're breathing.
Yeah. Oh, you're breathing. You're off the list. You drove more than 50 miles. I mean,
you're emitting carbon.
Yeah. And again, no technical infrastructure change is needed for this. So I want everybody to understand, just to go back to this really quickly, Congress is trying to make the Federal Reserve look like the bad guy, to make it look like there's some actual fighting back and forth. But Congress is going to be who passes this. The social credit system is not going to be created by the Federal Reserve. It's going to be created by Congress. Well, it's actually be created by WEF, some of these shadowy people working through Congress, but Congress is going to be who codifies it into law.
Sure. They're the law makers. Okay, Simon, the last thing, well, the resolution there, did you want to talk? I know you, I think
no, we've got a couple of videos to play, and obviously, Aaron, if you need to go, that's fine, but we've got that short video from Kennedy that's less than 3 minutes.
You're gonna play Kennedy. He's flipped now, it seems, and it's not confusing anymore. He just says vote for Trump. As before, he announced it was very confusing. Vote for him here, but not here. And let's go.
So we should play that, and we should definitely play the Turkish foreign minister, because I appreciate everyone probably already watched that in Turkish, but we actually have the version with the translation. And you just want to play the first 3 or 4 minutes of that 9-minute clip, because what he's saying in terms of the United States and the Biden administration being held responsible for genocide in Gaza is also really significant as well.
Here's Bobby Kennedy Jr.'s full-throated endorsement of Trump now.
Hey, everybody. A lot of people are asking me if they live in a red state or a blue state, should they still be voting for me? What about swing states? The answer is easy, no. No matter what state you live in, you should be voting for Donald Trump. And let me tell you why. That's the only way that we can get me and everything I stand for into Washington, D.C. and fulfill the mission that motivated my campaign. Right now, free speech is under withering and relentless attack in America and across the globe. But at least we still have enough of it here that you can watch this video. We can still run an opposition political campaign. Well, in a lot of countries, you can't do that anymore because the state now controls the media. The state censors the internet. Brazil just banned Twitter because Elon Musk refused to censor user speech. Kamala Harris says that Musk better behave himself or he will, quote, lose his
privileges and it should be taken down. They are directly speaking to millions and millions of people without any level of oversight or regulation. And that has to stop.
She thinks, and the Democratic establishment thinks, that free speech is a privilege. Well, you know and I know that it's a right. And if Kamala Harris is elected, the powers behind her will quash that right. They're already halfway there. It will be too late by 2028. Once we're in the grips of totalitarianism, we're not going to be able to vote our way out of it. This is our last chance to stop them. After long conversations with President Trump and his team and his family, I know that he is fully convinced of this priority. He sees the censorship machine for what it is. Remember, he was kicked off Twitter back in 2021, and he has experienced directly how government agencies are being weaponized to destroy the government's political opponents. He's going to be relying on me to help clean up that corruption, and that's why I'm relying on my supporters like you to help him return to the White House. As you know, this could be a very close election. A disputed election result would be a disaster for our divided nation. President Trump needs to win in a landslide, both in the Electoral College and in the popular vote. He can't do that unless my supporters join him. So look at the big picture. We have to unify. We have to overthrow the entrenched elites who are now ruining our country. So let's get Donald Trump elected on November 5th so that we can restore our Constitution, so that we can revive the middle class, so that we can rescue our democracy, end censorship and surveillance, unravel the war machine, protect children's health, and make America healthy again.
What do you think, Aaron?
No, it's great to see RFK endorsing Operation Warp Speed, and look. Here's the problem that I have with this, and I said this, a while ago. I don't even know if I said it on here, but the fact that RFK thought he could win running as an independent, he was clueless then, and he's as clueless now about his ability to be effective if Trump gets elected. If you look at the elections, and here's a fact no one wants to talk about. 74% of Americans can't identify the three branches of government. 50% of Americans don't know there's an electoral college.
Hang on a second. There's three branches?
Yeah. Healthcare, big pharma and big food and the military industrial complex.
Civics is hard, Aaron. Civics is hard.
So I think 33% of eighth graders passed, 28% in history. It's been on a decline. In other words, the voters are no to low information voters, and it's big data and AI that targets people during election cycles through political machines. Basically, it's propaganda that drives voter turnout, and the voters are ignorant. You don't win. You don't fix that. You can't fix that. And by the way, I keep on asking people, when has a nation gotten to the point that it's at right now in terms of overextension of military debt that's actually corrected itself? And the answer is it doesn't. You don't turn around something like this. You start over. And so, anyway, the short answer is it's absurd. I think that there will be no bigger rug pull. And what I can't tell is if these people are
no bigger rug pull again, because it already happened to him.
What?
No bigger rug pull again.
Yes,
because it already happened to him with the Vaccine Safety Commission.
Yes. Yeah.
Again.
So I don't know. I don't know if he's if they're delusional or what. But we can't vote our way out. If we don't win this election, we're going to be in totalitarianism. I'm sorry. What was 2020? What were the lockdowns about? What were the mask mandates about? What was Operation Warp Speed about? What was the money printing about? What is the surveillance state about? The Patriot Act, the CARES Act? What is all
keeping
of
us keeping us safe, Aaron?
Is that keeping us safe? Is that not totalitarianism? I guess I look at this and I say, I look at the Bill of Rights. The Bill of Rights has been gone since 9/11. So people are just kind of coping. The sooner we realize we've got to rethink things from first principles, the better. The rest of this is just a diversion that allows the technocracy to creep in because we're going to get more surveillance infrastructure every step of the way.
Everybody can go to Elon Musk's app for everything. X right now it's social media. He's going to roll out payment systems, banking, so on and so on and so on until we just have that Chinese WeChat style app here, and it'll all be wonderful and save us. Okay, Simon, you want to set up the Turkish foreign minister?
Yes, so this is Mr. Fidan, who was previously their equivalent of Mr. Burns, head of the CIA in Turkey. He's been their foreign minister for about a year. He's the chap who coined the phrase, the iron triangle between Turkey, Saudi Arabia, and Iran. He attended the foreign ministers' meeting of the Arab League in Cairo today, shortly after the president of Egypt went and met with the president of Turkey in Ankara. And that was the first time the Turkish representative had attended, not because they were boycotting it, because Turkey and Iran technically aren't part of the Arab League, that they are members of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, which Mr. Erdogan has now summoned not an emergency meeting of, but an urgent meeting of. Okay, so he addressed along with many other foreign ministers, the meeting. And he had some pretty darn bold things to say. As usual, being the Prince of the Obscure, I was one of very few people speaking not Turkish to watch this live. Fortunately, TRT did simultaneous translation. And I was shocked at the content, not because there was gambling in the casino, but actually because he was calling for criminal accountability for the Biden administration, albeit he said those accomplices of the aardvarks. And so if you could please care to play that. It's not long, the translation is very clear and it's loud, unlike the Russian disinformation that is almost impossible to decipher.
Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan is speaking at the Arab League's foreign ministers meeting. It's the first time in 13 years that Turkey is attending the summit. Let's listen in.
I would like to thank Secretary General, His Excellency Ahmet Abul Gate, and on his behalf, all members of the Arab League for this kind invitation. I also would like to extend my congratulations to His Excellency Mohammed Salim Merzouk, Minister of Foreign Affairs of Mauritania, and His Excellency Dr. Shahya Muhsin Al-Zindani, Minister of Foreign Affairs of Yemen, for the chairmanship. Dear sisters and brothers, we meet today at a time of historic responsibility for all of us. The international system fails to prevent genocide in Palestine. It is time for unity and solidarity to defend our people and our dignity. We cannot accept that Palestinian lives, Arab lives, and Muslim lives matter less than others. The collective punishment of people of Gaza is now increasingly spreading to West Bank. Israel is taking advantage of current circumstances and exploiting divisions. Our ranks must be watertight, be it Arab countries, be it Muslim countries, be it Palestinian factions, be it United Nations. Only then we can stop this barbaric war machine. Turkey has imposed full trade restrictions on Israel. We will not restore trade until Israel accepts the ceasefire and enables unimpeded humanitarian access to Gaza. We also submitted our declaration of intervention in the lawsuit before the International Court of Justice initiated by South Africa. The bloodshed we are witnessing today is a direct result of impunity after previous rounds of aggression. This time, it has to be different. Those responsible should be held accountable before international courts. One thing needs to be precise. Those who still provide support to Netanyahu continue to be accomplices of the ongoing genocide. They will also be held to account. Distinguished colleagues, we are all aware that there can be no lasting peace without a just solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. And there can be no illusion of security for Israel without the two-state solution based on 1967 lines, independent and sovereign Palestinian state with Kudus its capital. International law has spoken loud and clear. Israel's occupation is illegal. Decades of occupation, oppression, and violence must come to an end. Israel cannot get away with creating illegal fait accomplis on the ground. Another recent example is Israel's reckless efforts to change the identity of Jerusalem and violate the historical status quo in Haram al-Sharif. The storming of Haram al-Sharif by hundreds of radical Israelis under police protection is a brazen provocation. The involvement of ministers in such provocations testify to the degree of moral collapse of the Israeli government. It should be evident to everyone.
He's talking to Trump there, Simon.
So he's not talking just to Trump, but the Biden administration.
Well, our whole government, just about, yeah.
There's a lot of takeaways from there. So where he's talking about Al-Quds, he's talking about East Jerusalem. And he's also talking about Haram al-Sharif, which is the Al-Aqsa Mosque. Okay, and when he talks about cabinet ministers going on to it, obviously that's Ben Gvir. Okay, so there's a lot of takeaways there. So he's really calling out the countries that are part of the Abraham Accord. So that's Morocco, Bahrain, and the United Arab Emirates. He's calling them out strong. Okay, saying we've put on sanctions, you need to do the same, right? The conversation that I had with another person in this line of interest was that he sounded like not a Turkish foreign minister, but he sounded like the Iranian foreign minister. It was a really staunch speech, shockingly staunch, even to me. And I'm watching him very carefully because he is a smart guy, okay? And he picks his words carefully. And when they are shocking, it's with intent, okay? So I would say that, something very significant, the tone has suddenly changed because of what's going on in the West Bank now. So we saw the German foreign minister yesterday do a press conference with Ayman Safadi, who's normally Captain Milquetoast and won't say boo to a goose. And in addition to growing his beard much longer than usual, he abused her right to her face and said that Germany is supporting a country that's engaged in genocide and violating international humanitarian law. And when you whine and squeal, they don't give a heck. And he was real blunt, like in English, standing right next to her at a press conference, like laying it out, bearing in mind that Germany is the largest.
You cut out there, Simon. Let's also quickly, while Simon tries to reconnect, on a lighter note here, maybe if we can have any light notes on this heavy subject day of genocide and technocracy enslavement, we do have the Outer Space Security Conference of 2024 going on here. And so for those alien believers in the audience, you may want to check out this Outer Space Security Conference OS 24. That's our thumbnail that we put out for the show. Just to let everybody know that was happening.
Today, and it extends into tomorrow. People can find the details either via my Twitter or your Twitter, where we've linked it, or just go hashtag OS
24.
2024.
24.
OS stands for outer space. Okay. So they're not only talking about countries putting weapons in space, okay, like the rods of God or direct energy weapons or so forth. Remember, we had that panic in the United States earlier this year when we were told by Mr. Turner, the head of the, was it House or Senate Intelligence Committee, that the Russians had put weapons in space, and there literally was a national panic. Aaron, do you remember that earlier this year, January or February, when the whole country was like in a frenzy, like we were about the Chinese balloon?
Yeah, I do remember that, but that went away awfully fast.
Yeah,
like that was a blip, and then it was gone.
It was a distraction operation, just to keep our eyes off other news that was coming out at the time. But now this is being actually debated, and it's being sponsored by the United Nations Department on International Disarmament. So they are obviously treating it, seriously as potentially nukes in space. But the other thing that these people are doing is that they're wanting to look into deep space so that we can protect not only against giant asteroids, but also potentially against alien invasion fleets. And I'm not being facetious for a change. So it might be worth people having a look at. They do have a YouTube channel. The links are available. That started today. It will be continuing tomorrow. There's also what's known as the Yerevan Dialogue. That's going on. There's some kind of interesting stuff at that. And then there's also the United Nations Organization on Nuclear Disarmament. That's been meeting in London, sponsored by the Royal United Services Institute. They're putting some of that on YouTube. That's at RUSI, RUSI. That's today and tomorrow. So, we are well and truly now back into the political.
I think our last story, seems like you cut out there again, Simon. You've been having connection issues. Our last big story of the day was this talk about US and UK going ahead and signing off on long-range missile use by Ukraine. So essentially shooting Moscow.
Yeah, this is been demanded for a couple of months now by Zelensky and his Nazi cronies. And they've got a certain number of missile systems. They've got the ATACMS, they've got Scalp, they want Taurus from the Germans, they've got British Storm that run at like $650,000 a pop. And now they want the JASSAMs from America. And so there was a joint press conference between Blinken and David Lammy, ex-Harvard, ex-Guyana, who's now amazingly the British Foreign Secretary. And they were speaking in London. They are traveling to Kiev tomorrow on Wednesday. Okay, they're meeting with Zelensky. He's going to formally put his demands, though he's already done so, to Austin at the Ukraine NATO contact group meeting that happened in Germany last week and over the weekend. And then they're both going to brief their respective prime ministers or presidents on Thursday. And then Starmer is meeting with Biden in Washington, D.C. on Friday. Now, the story was that the UK were keen, like many of the Baltic states and the Swedes, for the Ukrainians to be able to do everything short of nuking Moscow. Okay, but the US have been consistently saying no. And it would seem, because Biden made a statement today, saying that he was working through that issue, which is the process that's been described for Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, to actually agree not only on the delivery of the longer range American weapons, but also on Zelensky having a free hand as to how they're deployed. And he needs that because they're starting to get crushed in Kursk, and their battle defense lines are starting to collapse in Donetsk. And as we've just seen with Lindsey Graham, our favorite representative of the pink hand in the Carolinas, saying that there are trillions of dollars of rare earth metals in Ukraine, actually in Ukraine and Donetsk, in the eastern oblasts, the eastern provinces of Ukraine, are where a lot of those are concentrated. And so, if they're ever going to kind of like break even, and if BlackRock are going to make a good return on their investments, they really do need to be able to boot the Russians completely out of Ukraine, as opposed to just drawing a ceasefire line on the kind of existing no man's land. So that's where we are in terms of World War III. This is potentially extremely provocative, because some of these missiles could be armed with nuclear weapons. And so when they are firing this stuff, and it's with a big 1,000-pound warhead on the missiles, as the Russians have been saying, with the F-16s, which are nuclear capable for dropping the, B-21 bombs, not the B-21 Raider, but the B-21 actual free-fall nuclear weapons. Like, how do we know what's on that plane if it's nuclear mission capable? Okay, so we should all hope that saner heads are going to group together, but it certainly, once again, doesn't look very likely. So,
well, that would cancel the election if they kick off nuking in Ukraine, Russia.
Yeah, well, it doesn't even, frankly, need to be nuking Ukraine, Russia. It could just be a full-scale war against Iran. And that's another option that Bibi's like super, super keen to trigger, we know. So even though Trump's constantly saying we're on the edge of World War III, and we know that Kennedy is very anti the ongoing Ukraine war, we know that they're both crazy pro-aardvark, and so they might be enticed into bringing about the second coming if they get asked formally to do so by the chief rabbi of Israel. And so I think we should wrap up our show. We've kind of gone a bit over our intended time. Aaron, it's been a pleasure. Thank you ever so much. Please do give us all of your contact information now when I do the close that song intro. And then, if you'd care to have Sam or I do anything in future with you, obviously we're on a common purpose or similar, it would appear. Or if you'd like to come back, if you've got some big announcement, please do feel to reach out to us. But I'm sure you'll enjoy the closeout song. We tend to have an intro which we skipped today because we knew that we'd be running short of time. And then we have a longer song, which in theory is relevant to the headlines. And so in light not only of SpaceX launching 4 tourists into not low Earth orbit, but for the first time ever into mid-Earth orbit, including private spacewalks for a collection of billionaires, one of whom I understand actually dropped out of high school in New Jersey. So that's fairly impressive, making that many zeros. Kind of like Sean Hannity, I guess, who's now got 500 slum dwellings that he manages. And so our song today from David Bowie is Space Oddity. Many of our audience may actually know it instead as Major Tom. So I hope that our audience will appreciate that, not only in relation to SpaceX, getting that ever so slightly closer to Mars, but also with our outer space security conference being hosted by the UN in Geneva and continuing to run tomorrow, if people are more concerned about aliens rather than the Russians, the Chinese or the Iranians. You never know, you may get lucky on your bingo card, though apparently we'll never ever get to spend our bingo winnings because we'll get paid out in the form of CBDC apparently. Yep. So with that, Aaron, if you'd just like to make your final remarks, and then Sam, you'll do your normal infamous wrap up. And we must also, of course, ask people not only to give to Aaron's organization, which apparently is tax deductible, which is amazing. We unfortunately haven't managed to finagle that yet, but we still would like a whole Bitcoin, or you can share us with golden stars like Trump in a Russian hotel room, or do us buy me a coffee, or just make a $6.66 donation monthly, obviously. depending on whichever calendar you prefer to use, Gregorian or otherwise, Julian, on weaponizednews.com. So thank you once again, and I'll sign off and say goodbye to everyone. And it's been a pleasure meeting you, Aaron.
It's a pleasure meeting you too. Thank you for having me. I always enjoy coming on. I'd love to come on again. The best way to reach me is daylightfreedom.org. That site has all the information about my book, links to my articles, as well as links to the workshops that we have scheduled all around the country. Our next workshop is October the 5th in New Jersey. Then we have an event in Omaha on November the 9th, and then Nashville, Tennessee on December the 14th. And then you can also reach me on Twitter at Aaron R. Day.
I just put it up there on the screen. There's Aaron's Twitter X account at Aaron with 2 A's, Aaron R. Day. Let me make it a little bit bigger. Right there, you can see that there. And then, of course, daylightfreedom.org. Thank you very much, Aaron. We do appreciate your work spreading the word, trying to educate the American people about our financial system, the government, where we're actually at, and don't let them fool us into thinking that there's some great campaigners for our liberty when all these tyrannical systems are already very much in place. And so Ted Cruz is not your hero. None of these characters out there saying they're going to save us are your heroes, because maybe they don't even know, but they should know that, well, if they really wanted to save us, they would repeal the Federal Reserve Act. That's well within Congress's authority to do, but I don't see that ever happening. And so they're going to hem and haw around the edges until we fall right off the cliff, and we're going there at lightning speed. So thank you for your efforts to continue to educate the American people. Aaron, we do appreciate it, as we do here at Weaponized News, informing you about the daily geopolitical events, economics, and the new world order is forming quickly. So shout out to everyone tuning in on the Rumble. Thank you, Mercurius. I see a lot of comments there. Thank you on the Rock Fan. There were some lively comments there. Gene, Teresa, and Denver. Thank you very much for the comments there. And on the, I see Fat Bob on the Odyssey. Thank you, Fat Bob. We were missing you the last couple of days. We didn't know what happened. Good to see you back on the chat there. And thank you, everybody, for the BitChute. I see there's live viewers, but they still have not sorted out a live chat there that I'm aware of. So thank you, everybody, for tuning in to this edition. I know everybody's going to run off and watch that debate. And so remember, when you're watching this debate, both parties, Harris and Trump, are responsible for the medical intervention period and all the tyranny that came about. And none of them will be questioned about 9/11 either. And so remember that in the back of your mind when you're watching this debate, that your mainstream corporate CIA Mockingbird media will not ask them any questions of any substance whatsoever. That's why you need to tune into Weaponized News. As always, everybody do your own research. Peace, love, and liberty. Speak out and take action. Have a great great Tuesday evening, and we'll be back here tomorrow on Wednesday to debrief from the traumatizing debate. Here is David Bowie, Space Odyssey, playing us out.
Ground control to Major Tom. Ground control to Major Tom. Take your protein pills and put your helmet on. 10. Ground control 9, to Major Tom. 8, 7, 6. Commencing countdown, engines on. 3, 2. Check ignition and may God's love be with you. stepping through the door, and I'm floating in a most peculiar way, and the stars look very different today, for here am I sitting in a tin can, far above the world. Planet Earth is blue and there's nothing I can do. Though I'm past 100,000 miles, I'm feeling very scared, and I think my spaceship knows